when Mother Daniels' health began to fail, and she had surgery, and after the surgery, I pleaded with her to reside with me. She had said that she wanted to live independently and remain in her home. My brothers and my sisters, we tried with everything within our power to convince Mother. Mother, just live with each one of us for a few months. You raise your children. Now let us take care of you. When we saw that that would not work, and I then changed my strategy. Tell somebody, sometimes you gotta change your strategy. So when I saw that a permanent conversation would not work about shifting residency, I asked my mother, I said, Mother, will you just stay with me till you feel a little better? I gave her all of the reasons why it would not be an imposition for her to live with me. How many of you know that if one mother, the father died suddenly of a heart attack without notice over 40-something years ago while I was at a car wash at my pastor's home, raising money for our youth department. And for 28 years, my mother lived after my father. And for many of those years, I believe about 7, I was able to convince her to stay and to live with me. There was one Saturday morning, never will forget it. I went with my sister and I went with my uncle, and we thought we'd just drive over to Illinois and come right back. While driving and coming back, for whatever reason, nothing but God, because normally we wouldn't let the ladies drive, the brothers would do the driving. My sister drove, Sister Carter. And all of a sudden, my Deacon Don Cornelius, he called me on my cell phone, and he said to me these words I never will forget. He had come there to meet me to take care of some matters, and he had walked in, and there were others in the house. And he said to me, he said, Pastor, I believe Mother Daniels has just died. My young nephew was in the car, and I didn't want to cause him to panic. So I just started beating on the hood, on the dashboard, telling my sister, drive. I was pointing towards my home. Cars were in the way. I said, run them over. You know, sometimes you just get out of yourself. You know, never would have got there running them over. You know what I mean? She wasn't driving fast enough for me, and so when we got near where my house was, because the joy is that during Mother's time at my house every morning, she and I had breakfast together. I cut up her fruit, we laughed, we talked. Every night she prayed for me, and many days she'd get up and hit me on the head and anoint me with oil and let me know there's nothing too hard for God. She would say things like, baby, don't believe the devil's report. Matters not what people say, do know what God has said. But that day when I got close to the house and Sister Carter wasn't driving fast enough, I jumped out of the car while it was moving, and I ran down the street and ran up the hill to my house. Fire trucks and ambulance, and I ran in the house and jumped on the floor and started pleading to God, asking him Please, Lord, let it turn around. God had something else in store for Mother. And when the ambulance finally was able, the paramedics were finally able to get a pulse, I was in the ambulance with her. And from my house to the hospital, 7 times they had to stop and give her with the defibrillator a jump and get her heart going again. She made it to that critical care, and she never came back to that house, but she went to a better house. How many of you all know that God has a better house? She would sing this song that we're ready to sing now. I would hear her singing it. A room was right next door to mine. But the amazing thing is that Sister Queenie, who, just like Phyllis this morning, sang the first hymn. That's why I wanted her to sing 30 years later for Holy Redeemer. She sang Sister Phyllis Hood. And Sister Queenie sang I Go to the Rock 30 years ago. But while my mother was there, her last days here on this earth, Queenie came to check on Mother and to check on us from Chicago. And she got to Mother's ear and she began singing these words. And a woman who had never responded and had never had any reaction, when she heard about this garden of prayer, tears began to come down from her eyes. You see, always before there is a resurrection, there's always that garden of Gethsemane where you go and you pray out of yourself.